Howdy everybody, this is a Roaming Prepper and I'm your host Pete. Thank you for joining me again today. So, $1,000,000 question. Are we repeating the mistakes of World War I? Why do I say that? Well, recently there was an assassination in Russia that caused a lot of problems, and I fear that we may have a repeat of what happened in 1914 happen again to us. I'll be right back, and let's talk about why I'm so concerned about this and how it can affect all of us. Howdy folks, welcome back and thank you for joining me again. I normally premiere these videos so you can ask any questions in the live chat. If I don't make my own premiere, which has happened before because of work, feel free to reach out to me in the comments below the video and I'll try to answer you in a timely manner as possible. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. So, to my topic, what is going on and what happened? So, the daughter of staunch Putin ally Alexander Dugin killed in car bombing near Moscow, and this is a picture of the old man who is an ally of Putin and his daughter, a very lovely young woman. She was a 29-year-old reporter and anchor woman in a news studio in Russia, and she spoke nationalist news. It turns out the bomb went off in the father's Land Cruiser. They had gone out to an event, and for whatever reason, the old man stayed behind because there were colleagues there and they were going to, solve the world's problems. She decided to drive home on her own and drove into their residence parking lot, or into the residence garage, in his vehicle when the bomb was set off. So apparently it was remotely triggered. They were probably trying to kill the old man and got the girl instead. What it says, an explosive device presumably installed in the Land Cruiser went off on a public road and the car caught fire. Female driver died at the scene. The explosion occurred while Dugina, who's the daughter, 29, was driving on, it was on the highway. My correction, sorry. It was on the highway going back home. The father intended to ride along but ended up in a different vehicle after their event. He was chit-chatting with a colleague and was driving home with the other person. Why does this concern me? Let's go back. Let's do a history lesson. World War I started because Austria-Hungary wanted some fertile land in Serbia, or they wanted something from the Serbian lands, and they claimed that there were ethnic Hungarians there. Sound familiar? And so they went in there and took a chunk of Serbia, which pissed the Serbians off, but they didn't pick a fight over it. A Serbian nationalist then went into Austria and killed the Archduke, unendorsed by his government, but it was a perfect excuse for Austria-Hungary to blame Serbia and say it was your fault because it was a Serbian national. They did not send him, they did not endorse him, but they blamed him nonetheless. And then thinking that surely the assassination of a royal would justify an invasion, they went ahead and attacked Serbia, not realizing that Serbia had an alliance with France and Germany had an alliance with Austria-Hungary, which ironically Germany told them don't start the war because it's going to end badly for everyone. They did not listen, and ultimately has cascaded into World War I because of all these overlapping alliances. So oddly enough, Russia, France, Poland, and Germany, Russia, France, Poland, and the UK, and ultimately the USA, were the allies, and then the Central Powers were Austria-Hungary, Ottomans, and Germany. All of those monarchies pretty much went down the toilet after this war, and as we all know, the entire map of Europe and the West was rewritten, and Russia ultimately fell into the USSR, into Soviet communism, up until 1990. So that concerns me. Now you're probably wondering, well, how is this similar? Keep in mind, Serbia is still very close to Russia, which is why Russia got into it in World War I in the first place. So Serbia If Russia calls for aid, Serbia will answer. The Chechens are allies, and now North Korea has offered to send 100,000 volunteer soldiers to Russia to help them fight the war in Ukraine. At the same time, we have NATO pouring equipment into Ukraine, and American and British and New Zealand and Australian and Canadian volunteers are going into Ukraine to help train them, along with possibly, special forces from both sides helping the respective sides. That can escalate because this kind of situation is basically an assassination. If they take the route that it was a terrorist act, Russia now has a green light to go after whoever it was. Now, I'm afraid they're going to blame Ukraine, even if Ukraine had nothing to do with it, or they're going to find someone else to beat up and go beat them up, and basically say, well, they committed an act of terror, we needed to take care of it. This continuing escalation is concerning. Russia may also decide that other certain types of weapons are no longer off limits, and they may escalate in that way. We don't know. What will happen, though, if the war gets worse, the food supplies that are just now starting to reach Africa and the Middle East from Ukraine and Russia, the wheat and the corn or whatever else they're transporting under an agreement not to shoot at the transports, that's going to come to a screeching halt. You're going to now have North Korean troops engaged directly in a conflict with a European nation. And you kind of see how this is, once again, you're seeing this interwoven web of alliances, treaties, and the presence of troops. Now, I'm doing another video involving Chinese expansion into Afghanistan. Yes, they want to put units in the very bases we just left for the Afghani army, which they then abandoned anyway and gave to the Taliban. And in Pakistan, you notice these powers are now placing military units all across that region. That's going to result at some point, someone's going to make a mistake. Someone's going to shoot the wrong guy, shoot down the wrong airplane, sink the wrong ship, and the next thing you know, we're going to have other nations are going to get sucked into this toilet of stupidity we have in Eastern Europe. How do we mitigate that as preppers? Well, we can't, as I've said before, we can't do anything about the geopolitics of another part of the world, but we can recognize that if that escalates, natural gas is going to get cut off to Europe. If that happens, the price of natural gas is going to take off. It's already $9. Oil is going down and natural gas is going up because natural gas is the preferred fuel in Europe. And with those prices going like that, natural gas is going to skyrocket. It's going to take off. You're going to see blackouts and outages in Europe, which they're already starting to see. You may see blackouts and outages in Canada and the US because we're sending our stuff to them to help them. That can result in poor crops, which we're already seeing. Ranching is going to suffer, fertilizer is going to suffer, and ultimately food, clothing, and the day-to-day amenities all of us rely on can get affected. That's just the economic side of it. If it escalates and Russia, for whatever reason, decides NATO had something to do with it, I wouldn't put it past them. They may not roll tanks into Germany, but they'll turn the lights off on Germany. And it wouldn't be far-fetched to think they'll take pot shots at our ships. And that can escalate that way too. And keep in mind, now you have North Korea and Cambodia have alliances with China. Who's to say they won't turn around and punch South Korea for no reason just because they can? We don't know. And what's ironic is Vietnam is no longer getting along with China, so Vietnam might actually be on our side, which would be really bizarre. So yeah, the overlapping alliances will cause such a trash heap that I can't even explain it. There's so many ways this could play out, but at the end of the day, how it affects us, food, clothing, amenities, and day-to-day items. So continue to do what you're doing, what you're prepping for, whether it's a blackout, an EMP, or Godzilla, or the Cloverfield monster, whatever the hell that thing was called. They're common items you should be doing right now to make sure you're ready. Have a mix of food. Don't just have canned food, have some long-term food, have some Mylar food, have some short-term food. Diversify. That's financially and with your preps. Those are the best things you can do to kind of weather this kind of storm. And remember, whenever there's been a collapse or a crash or a war in society that really engulfed civilization, there's always been a rebuild on the other side. What you want to do is survive the ugly part so you can be on the rebuild side. So folks, something to think about. Watch this situation. This could go nowhere. It can get super ugly and it'll happen fast. And keep in mind, Ukraine's Independence Day is going to happen end of August, early September. I can't remember the date. And the president of Ukraine has already warned his people, Russia may do something ugly to us. And then this happened. I don't know, guys. Coincidental? Unfortunate? I don't know. But in any case, keep doing what you're doing. Don't freak out. Take the info, plan accordingly. That's how we get through this. God bless, Godspeed. I will see you in the next one. And hey, I got through the video and wasn't cursing all the way through. You guys take care.